Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's Newstalk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We have news of a Ukraine ceasefire. Donald Trump said some positive words toward a ceasefire again today. You'll hear Putin via a translator say something similar that happened right before the James Show started. Here to make some sense of it, regular guest, foreign policy analyst for the James Show, David Hamilton from America's Future Series. Welcome back, David. How you doing?
Great to be here. It's a great day.
All right, now how did this happen? What changed in the last 48 hours that now we have a ceasefire deal?
Well, it's changed a little bit earlier than that. Just the willingness to talk on all sides has been a significant change. This is something that hasn't gone on for 2.5, 3 years. And you and I have talked about this pretty much all that time. So the simple fact that we're having serious discussions, that a plan has been put forward, and that the Russians have said, in principle, they are willing to consider it, is a huge move. And we all need to celebrate that for a moment. We then need to understand that this is going to be hard work. Clearly, the Russians are tough negotiators, right? Trump, of course, are the deal. This is going to be a negotiation where people are going to say, well, I have to have all of these things. They start with an extreme position, and then at some point they end up somewhere in the middle. Russia's famous for giving, 10 or 11 requirements. They had 11 different items that they wanted before the beginning of this war. And knowing that one or two of them would not be acceptable. So they'll throw the kitchen sink in it. But hopefully, if they're all serious about this, they want this killing to end. Nearly 700,000 people total have died in this war. So on both sides, there should be a great deal of motivation to come to some reasonable peace. It will probably falter at some point, and we need to be ready for that. Oh, my God, it's all off. It's on again, off it. That's how negotiations go. So we need to be prepared for that, but we're moving in the right direction.
So what are some things that are still in the gray area? Do we know if there's any territorial changes?
It is the territorial changes that are the key thing that have been in this discussion. One position, the Zelensky position, the Ukraine position, is they didn't want to give up one single inch of land. And you understand that position. The Russians have said, no, we're going to keep what we've got. That's not acceptable. The eastern part that I've talked about, the Donbass and the Donetsk, those are largely ethnically Russian-speaking. And some of that, in my guesstimation, will end up remaining. The map will have to be redrawn. And this will be incredibly upsetting to people in Ukraine, and you can't blame them for feeling that way. But for the sake of peace, and so that the sake of having a Ukraine to go forward, to no more children dying, some sort of accommodation is going to have to be made there. Clearly, no Ukraine in NATO and no Russia in what will remain to be Ukraine is the question. Then economically, how do we heal this by becoming actually allies? How do we change this entire dynamic so that we're doing trade together? Perhaps Nord Stream 2 is rebuilt. They start trading with Europe and providing oil and gas. You don't tend to kill your best customers. So we need to think about ways of ultimately ending the need for NATO, combining forces, at least coming at peace, and understanding that our combined enemy is actually China and not each other.
I don't know. Maybe we can expand the NFL and open a franchise in like Moscow and St. Petersburg or something. But yeah, I would like to. Yeah. I would like to eventually be friends with the Russians. These are the only other people that were in that space race that we had in the last century, and they've done a lot for a country that's only 100 million or so people, as far as their accomplishments to science and everything from Tsiolkovsky to the first dog in space. So, I'd really like to see us kind of patch things up with those guys.
Well, they are really not a threat to us, and that's the main thing we need to understand. Like you said, 100 million people, their economy is not that strong. They're actually very good in a few areas. We can learn from each other and help each other technologically. But ultimately, as a geopolitical threat, Russia, other than having some designs on some of these areas and not wanting any more countries joining NATO, not wanting any more missiles, nukes. I'm sorry, Poland, we're not going to put nukes on your land. We need to de-escalate this, figure out a way to partner together economically so that we have peace through strength and peace through economic ties.
So who's to say this won't embolden Putin to find another little break-off province that's adjacent to Russia and invade them when he gets his forces built back up?
That has to be part of the negotiated settlement. In my opinion, this is just one man's opinion, I would put in there that if you ever invade again, we will arm that country with every possible weapon imaginable.
All right, fair enough. Do you think this will hold for 30 days, David?
I think it will get extended. If I'm a betting man, it holds for 30 days. There's a little problem. We do it again. We go back to, it's just like Jerry Jones with the Dallas Cowboys, right? Deadlines make deals, and sometimes those deadlines get pushed.
I would not be using him as a point of reference, but your point's well taken, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. David Hamilton, America's Future Series. Appreciate your expertise, sir. Now, I'll just remind you, we were talking about last week, Trump and Zelensky clash. He got kicked out of the Oval Office, and no one was thankful enough, and those people were saying, talk to the hand, and everything was going ugly. And fast forward 1 week, and not only are we not in a catastrophic situation where this war and suffering is going to continue indefinitely, we're at the peace table. We're having talks, and it sounds like, I'll play it for you, and this is always tough because it's coming through a translator, but it sounds like he agrees in principle to the ceasefire, just not all the provisions in the ceasefire. And I was trying to dig through some of the nuance of it to explain some more. So I'll give you a little more detail, but listen to Putin real quick. This was him at about, I guess, 12:30 our time. I don't know what time it is on the other side of the planet. Saturday, for all I know. But here he is through a translator talking about the ceasefire deal.
Secondly, we agree with the proposals for the ceasefire, but our position is based on the assumption that the ceasefire would lead to a long-term peace, something that would remove the initial reasons for the crisis. As for the readiness of Ukraine to ceasefire, there's a meeting between Americans and Ukrainians in Saudi Arabia, and it looks like a decision that is taken by Ukrainian side under American pressure. In reality, I am completely convinced that Ukraine had to ask Ukrainians, ask Americans, insist on this, based on the situation on the ground.
Kind of historic news. I mean, we're talking Nobel Prize peace territory. Don't worry, you're not going to get nominated, much less get the medal. But come on, you remember Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize like 8 days into being a president? With no accomplishments. Here's an actual accomplishment. This will be a big deal. And this will not just be a big deal, politically, and it's good for Team Red, and, well, you get to own the libs or whatever. But no, like in a historic situation, this isn't going to be a big chapter in a history book. This is going to be avoiding a big chapter in a history book, because for a part of the last 3 years that this has been going on has always been there, the fork in the road where this could easily slide into something bigger, where this could easily spill over the borders. I mean, come on, folks. We were in a hot war with Russia. We had American missiles being shot into Russian territory, within Russian borders, killing Russian military assets. We weren't actually firing themselves, but we were making them, paying for them, giving them to Ukraine, pointing them at the Russians, and then letting a Ukrainian hit the button. I mean, my God, how close to an actual war with Russia do you want to be in? That's as close as you can get without it being official. So this is what the importance of this ceasefire deal is, not necessarily what we're stopping now, which is terrible. I mean, think of hundreds of thousands of people hurt and killed so far on both sides of this conflict. Yeah, all the buildings smashed, all the lost productivity, all the suffering of children and the orphans that are going to grow up without parents. I mean, all that's legit. But man, what we really avoided could have been so much worse. I really hope that this holds together. But this is continuing the interesting streak of a bunch of predictions that don't come true, and it's also like something that should give you a pause. And look at who is criticizing this. Who is not in favor of this? Who, when there was the meeting between Zelensky and Trump, wasn't trying to bring the parties together, wasn't trying to establish a harmonious world peace like you want to buy the world of Coke, like the old commercial. They're actively savaging the participants and trying to drive a wedge. I mean, maybe they weren't intentionally doing that, but their reporting certainly seemed like that angle. And now you have the party of peace, the party of civility, the party that opposes hate, and they want just to be inclusive and love and diversity. And now they're opposing a peace plan. Now they want to continue a war. That's odd. That's not kind of what you expected. That's not what, their brand is. And, there's a few other head-scratching moments that we're going through right now. Like, imagine telling someone in 2015, just 10 years ago, that here, right now, in 2025, you'd have angry left-wing radicals blowing up Teslas made by conservatives, blowing up electric cars made by conservatives. How crazy is that in just a 10-year span? What a great world we're living in. Also, this is today's evidence that we're living in a simulation. And the writers for USA season, what are we in now, 249, getting pretty lazy over there. Just reversing it like that. I don't know. I'm starting to think simulation again. So I hope it stands to pass. Some of the details that are hanging in the balance, not just the territorial stuff, but they're really getting into some nuancy, nerdy, deep level stuff here. Like there's a dispute over whether or not the boundary is going to be drawn to include a power plant in some town I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to try. But there's not an official truce. There's just, you heard Putin in the translator's words, saying that he has agreed to it in principle, but not necessarily every plank in the platform of the ceasefire deal. As soon as that comes out, though, you're going to have to leave it here to hear it, because you're not going to get a whole lot of credit from the people who just think Trump is the worst person ever. But I love seeing the changing of the positions. We now have Team Blue people opposing ending a war. We now have Team Blue people blowing up electric vehicles. I don't know if this means we're going into crazy town or we're in a simulation. I'm about 50-50 on the two. Tomorrow is going to be a very special edition of the Dan Bongino Show. It comes on right before my show here on WBAP, because it is the final edition of the Dan Bongino Show. I don't know. Maybe after he does his stint with the FBI, he'll come back for like Dan Bongino Show 2.0. But in the meantime, it's a perfect time for you to meet the guy who's going to be sitting in the big chair starting on Monday. Vince Coglianese, welcome to the James Show.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
And I know this isn't you officially saying hi to the WBAP audience, because we've heard you fill in for Dan Bongino before, but how you feel about taking the seat on a permanent basis? That's a pretty big shift.
I'm over the moon because you and I both know, everybody in radio knows the value of this time slot, the legacy that Rush Limbaugh created in it, and how much it means to have an opportunity to speak to America from there. So, yeah, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and I take it very seriously. And Monday, we are just going to have a monster show. We're going to start really strong, and we're not going to look back. I promise you, it's just going to be a total blast. And I can't do any of these conversations without talking about what an awesome sacrifice Dan is making here, because he's walking away from a very important show with a huge audience, and he's stepping back into service in government. And I'm just more impressed with each passing day by the guy. So I'm rooting for him, praying for him, and very excited to pick up the mantle here.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people understand. Dan Bongino's taking a pay cut, and he's leaving an empire that might not be there when he gets back. So, he may be sacrificed. I don't want to say he's, sacrificing it all, but this could turn out to be, financially speaking, the worst move he's ever made. He's just doing it for the right reasons.
Well, like Donald Trump, actually, in a lot of ways. Fundamentally, it just is a way to convey his decency, that he believes that there's something that is worth living for and worth fighting for. And it's definitely his country. And I can't be more impressed by the guy. And I really value the friendship that we've developed. Dan's a great guy.
Well, Vince Coglianese, tell us about the Vince Show. What makes your show different than any other show that we're going to hear on WBAP?
Well, I'm going to give you a first look at things that most of the media are either refusing to tell you about or don't even know about yet. I have a really big advantage in radio. I have an entire newsroom that works for me. I'm a daily caller editor. And so when I obsess over stories, I have reporters who I can sick all over them, which I constantly do. And I'm so excited to be able to bring that to a national audience as well. It's every day I'm talking to our White House correspondent. We're working on all of the questions you want to ask directly of the White House. This is about as direct a route as you can possibly get to getting some of the most important stories on the planet. And I'm going to bring on some of the biggest guests on the planet, too. So you're going to hear from people you don't hear from anywhere else, in-depth conversations, and we're going to make some news, a lot of it. So
you're in D.C., right?
Yeah, I'm based out of D.C. I've been on WMAL, which is the conservative flagship station in Washington, D.C. for the last 8 years. And my thinking was, well, let's keep doing that. I'm going to be based out of WMAL in Washington, and we're just going to bring in all these great guests and just keep crushing it. That's the goal.
Well, so WBAP is going to be all Texas shows except for you in the midday, which is based out of D.C., and then Mark Levin, which is in sort of the exurbs of the D.C. area. So we got our watchdogs keeping an eye on the big wigs in D.C., and the rest of it's local guys. So that's a cool element you bring to the table, because you've got one of the best Rolodexes in radio.
It's going to be wild. In fact, starting on Monday, Tucker Carlson's coming in studio with me, so we're going to have a big interview with Tucker, a lot to discuss with him, get his take, his kind of pulse of the nation, what he thinks is going on right now, how he thinks the Trump administration's handling everything, kind of what threats he kind of sees on the horizon. And, there's no shortage of stories, as you know, that really deserve a deeper look. I mean, look what Elon Musk is doing right now, and the flack he's catching, to the point that I think we can pretty confidently say his life is under constant threat. For what? For trying to make the government more efficient? It's one of the craziest possible times that you could live through. And you're going to need a really, clear sense of why it's all happening.
Well, Vince, I was just saying in the last segment, this is wild, because imagine telling someone in 2015 that left-wing radicals would be blowing up electric cars made by conservatives.
Yeah, Elon was their guy. They loved Elon. Elon's like, fine, we have a guy. He's our electric vehicle guy. And now, of course, he's all in on Donald Trump, because his view is the left has gone completely crazy. He hates the censorship. And he wants to see America restored to what made him want to become an American citizen in the first place. So thank God he's on our side. One of the few billionaires, it turns out, who is. The left likes to crow that that's like, the billionaires are on the right. No, not really. You just keep going down the list. The George Soroses, the Tom Steyers, the Reid Hoffmans. I mean, it is endless.
Zuckerberg, Bezos, Sergey Brin, Larry Page. Yeah, all those guys. Warren Buffett.
Unbelievable. And if you're wondering who's funding all of the efforts to go after Elon, look no further than the list that you and I are generating as we speak.
All right, Vince Coglianese, I'm going to put some pressure on you here. Dan Bongino spoiled us at WBAP because he would come do visits. As soon as you get your feet under you and you get all settled in, we're going to start leaning on you to come visit Dallas and shake some hands.
I'm telling you, the big conversation I've been having is we've got to get to Dallas. And one of the reasons for that is producer Jim Verdi, he's been taking care of Dan for all these years, and now he's going to be my guy. Jim's a Dallas guy, and he's saying we got to be in Dallas.
I forget not everyone knows that. Jim's in Louisville, y'all. Jim Verdi's been in our backyard this entire time. He's a local guy. He's been in Dallas radio for like 25 years or something. All right, Vince Coglianese, we're honored to have you join the team. I look forward to your first show on Monday.
Hey, thank you so much.
There he is. You just got to meet Vince Coglianese. It's not spelled that way, but just look for the Vince show. It's much easier. They used to love Elon Musk. And who is they? Well, it's some of the same people who think he's literally Hitler now. Let's just go through a montage put together by the geniuses, the absolute angels over at newsbusters.org is where I got this. And this is from CNBC, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS. They went through the cycle, and there's 2 CNN clips in here, too. This was them before Elon went MAGA.
I would argue that the new Jesus Christ of our era are Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and it's important to have heroes.
The 47-year-old engineer has been called the real-life Tony Stark, better known as Iron Man.
Elon Musk, a.k.a. real-life Iron Man.
The guy is brilliant.
He is a genius, and at least for now, the world is better off having Elon Musk in it than not.
Elon Musk is one of the most interesting people in America. He's in the world, and I guess in the universe.
Elon Musk is doing things that may revolutionize transportation and climate change.
When somebody as staggeringly rich and staggeringly intelligent as Elon Musk talks, people listen.
Has there ever been a car salesman like Elon Musk?
Elon Musk is I think beyond a car salesman. I mean, he's more like a hero for a lot of folks.
Just today, we were given a glimpse of something of a miracle at sea, or as Elon Musk calls it, Tuesday.
Let's talk about SpaceX. Well, Kate, the launch this morning was glorious.
Speaking of wonderful, out of this world, incredible images from the first all-civilian orbit around Earth. A huge win for Elon Musk.
It's an amazing development that's going on. You got to give a lot of credit to Elon Musk. Elon Musk, he deserves a lot of credit.
Tesla founder Elon Musk says he knows the biggest threat to humanity and he has a plan.
An immigrant to this country cemented his status as a leader in science and technology whose name may indeed belong alongside those of Edison and Jobs. Put another way, Elon Musk today showed the world how it's done.
Yeah. From Jesus Christ to Thomas Edison to all kinds of glowing praise. Now, what happened? Now, this is being phrased by some people as well. The sides just switched on Elon Musk. No, they didn't. No. Only one side switched on Elon Musk. You cannot come up with a similar montage of 10, 15 years ago, a whole bunch of Republicans or right-wing commenters or people on Fox News saying Elon's literally Hitler. No, there's not the same inconsistencies on both sides. You can't both sides this one. And it went from him being that to now coordinated, organized pattern of destruction against Tesla dealerships, against Tesla vehicles, against individual Tesla owners. They're setting dealerships on fire. They're setting charging stations on fire. They're spray painting some guy's Cybertruck that's sitting in his own driveway. The vandalism, the hatred. Wow. What a turnaround. Now, at some point, don't you think they realize in their head, like, wait a second, 10 years ago, he was the greatest guy on earth. Now I'm being told that his existence is intolerable to our culture going forward. That's one hell of a change. Well, the guy who has the best job, Scott Jennings, the lone voice of reason on CNN, noticed it too.
That he would get us out of the war in Ukraine. He promised all of these things and he hasn't done it. And instead, which I think was a terrible PR move, and Scott, I'm assuming you agree, because as a Republican strategist, you wouldn't have advised him to go in front of the White House and drive a Tesla.
Wait, why?
Because
of course I would have. You know why? Because if I were advising a Republican president, I would say, let's support American companies that have thousands of American workers and thousands more workers who make indirect products for it. Yeah, I think it would be a good idea if American companies did well under my administration.
Okay, so you're going to go ahead and support a billionaire but not support the American worker and not necessarily
Who do you think makes Teslas, Sochi? American workers. It's good if
but it's
Tesla
very much
well,
as
American
Dana mentioned.
You think
Elon
Elon
it's a
builds
quid
them
pro
all in his basement? They got factories all over the place.
And making business deals that end up benefiting himself. A lot of those things are miracle look for Donald Trump.
Democrats so excited to tear down an American company or companies the way they are right now. It's crazy.
God, I want that job. So I could do both. I could do the James show and then afterwards, because he's on at night, right? Just tap me in via satellite to these people. Have me at a table with 4 people who disagree with me, but what they're saying is just so easily flipping over the table. He's just cool as the other side of the pillow. That's got to be so fun. I love hearing that. And so that's not the only about face that we've seen on this guy, though. We've also seen all of a sudden Team Blue loves government shutdowns. They would rather do the government shutdown than the continuing resolution. Now, in this one, I can both sides this one a little bit, but I'm just going to use the capital R Republicans and capital D Democrats. I know the regular street Democrats that I'm friends with and Republicans that I'm friends with the lowercase r and lowercase d. This isn't a criticism of you. This is more just the main players up in D.C. The continuing resolution means we're going to continue the spending that's already in place, that was decided when Joe Biden was president, that was decided under the previous House and Senate. So this isn't the Trump regime coming in and implementing their agenda. And this is one of the reasons I oppose it. This isn't Trump's agenda. This is Biden's agenda continued. But they can't even stand that. And now instead of continuing Biden's spending levels, they would rather shut down the government. So we don't what? Shut down the government? Jasmine Crockett. Makes sense.
In my opinion, if we're shut down, you can't be fired. And what does that mean? It does mean that people will not be paid, but it does mean that they will get their back pay. So hopefully we can stop some of the bleeding. We just saw that the Department of Education laid off 50% of their workforce. So I don't really understand why anybody would say, oh, we got to take the high road. Listen, he is decimating the federal government. And you're talking about whether or not we're going to keep the doors open. He literally is shutting down departments anyway.
Yes. Listen to Jasmine Crockett, y'all. Let's do a big government shutdown. Let's just leave it all shut for as long as we possibly can. Coming up next, there's a new form of keyless car theft. It's kind of scaring me because it targets the kind of car I have. But with these new key fobs, I mean, can you really ever lock your door anymore? Jerry Reynolds, the car pro, coming up next on The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.